Hi, my name is Tori and I am a doctor of physical therapy who specializes in pelvic dysfunction, which means I treat things that can go wrong around the pelvis. Back in June of this year, I made a video all about the female G-spot. And when creating that video, I also learned a ton about female ejaculation and I offered to make a different video all about it. That video has been requested multiple times, which is such an honor. Thank you all so much for watching and requesting. It means so much to me. And that brings us to today's video, a video all about female ejaculation. Now, the female prostate, the bladder, and the urethra are all important pieces of the puzzle in today's video topic. And I think some of today's content would make more sense if you had a really good understanding of their anatomy and function. I don't have time in today's video to extensively review those topics, so please, if you want a review, go check out my female G-spot video. You can click right up here, or you can check the description below for a link. I really deep dive into the anatomy and function of the female prostate, the bladder, and the urethra about 10 minutes into that video. You will also find timestamps and links to all of the studies that I mention in today's video in the description. With that in mind, today we are going to discuss whether or not female ejaculation is real, its history, the different types of female ejaculation, what female ejaculation is made of and where it comes from, and finally, the variability in female ejaculation. Let's start then with the burning question: is female ejaculation real? Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes, and a lot more common than you might think. In this 1990 study, an anonymous questionnaire was answered by 1,172 women. Of these respondents, 40% reported having a fluid release at the moment of orgasm. In this 2013 systematic review, it's reported that anywhere between 10 to 54% of women experience ejaculation. Finally, in this 2013 study, 320 female ejaculators were surveyed from all over the world. And when asked if they knew other female ejaculators, 158 of them said yes. Again, female ejaculation is real and much more common than you might think. If those numbers aren't convincing enough, let's turn to the history of female ejaculation. As it turns out, female ejaculation has been documented for a long time. According to this 2010 systematic review, in the Western world, female ejaculation was first mentioned around 300 BC by Aristotle, and in the 2nd century by Galen, who was an influential Greek physician. In the Eastern world, female ejaculation was well known and documented in Taoist texts dating back to the 4th century, and it is described in detail in most works of the Kama Sutra. With this history in mind, one of my first questions was, when and why did we start questioning the validity of female ejaculation? Unfortunately, I could trace some of that back to Masters and Johnson, pioneers in sex research, who have, regardless of their stance on female ejaculation, done wonders in the realm of studying human sexual behavior. But they did, according to this 2009 study, claim that female ejaculation was a myth. Masters and Johnson reported that the handful of women who reported female ejaculation in their studies could, quote, be explained by urinary stress incontinence, which is urine leakage, and suggested Kegel exercises or urinary surgery. They concluded that the phenomenon did not exist. Then in 1978, Sevely and Bennett published a study reviewing the extensive history of female ejaculation and concluded that women can, in fact, ejaculate. This study challenged Masters and Johnson's conclusions and was a catalyst for even more research into the female ejaculation phenomenon. Which brings us to Dr. Whipple and her colleagues, who, you may recall, coined the term the G-spot. If you remember from my video all about the female G-spot, Dr. Whipple was originally interested in studying female ejaculation. Recall that before she pursued research, she was a nurse, treating women who were leaking urine. And it was the otherwise perfectly healthy women who were reporting urine leakage but only during sex that prompted her to study the potential of female ejaculation. This not only led her and her colleagues to Dr. Grafenberg's work and the eventual publication of their 1982 book, The G-Spot and Other Recent Discoveries About Human Sexuality, but also led to the intertwining of the G-spot and female ejaculation in both popular culture and science. We now have ample evidence to support that while G-spot stimulation may lead to ejaculation in some women sometimes, the two aren't necessarily associated with one another. Said another way, some women can ejaculate without G-spot stimulation, which leads nicely into our next topic, the different types of female ejaculation. In the recent study of female ejaculation, scientists have further differentiated the phenomenon. Originally, female ejaculation was used to describe any and all fluid expelled by a female during sexual arousal. No matter when it was expelled, the amount that was expelled, the consistency of the fluid, the color of the fluid, none of that mattered. All of it was considered female ejaculation. To give you an idea of just how different female ejaculation can be, let's call back to that 2013 study that surveyed 320 different female ejaculators from all over the world. The volume of ejaculate that these women experienced varied from less than 1 milliliter to over 150 milliliters. Furthermore, the color of the ejaculate also varied from clear as water to white and milky to even yellow in a few cases. Now, scientists have separated female ejaculation and squirting as two different phenomena. The two are differentiated by the amount of fluid associated with them and the components of that fluid. Essentially, female ejaculation means smaller amounts of white, milky type fluid, and squirting means larger amounts of clearer type fluid. Let's further break that down by first discussing what these fluids are made of so that we can make sense of where these fluids might come from. Recall that true female ejaculation refers to small amounts of white milky fluid. When this fluid is analyzed, it has high concentrations of prostate-specific antigen, or PSA, a protein produced by the male prostate that's found in semen, as well as fructose and glucose, both of which are sugars, both of which are found in male semen. As a side note, if you, the viewer, have ever tasted true female ejaculation, it's those sugars, fructose and glucose, that can make it taste sweet sometimes. Knowing the components of true female ejaculate, it starts to make sense that this fluid might originate in the female prostate, aka the Skene's glands, aka the periurethral glands. And that hypothesis is widely accepted in recent research. Again, if you want to learn more about the female prostate, please check out my video all about the G-spot. Link is in the description. Here's the catch. The female prostate can account for true female ejaculate, definitely. But anatomically, there's no way it can account for squirting. Let me explain. According to this 2000 mini review of the female prostate, its average weight is about 5 grams. The average male prostate weighs about 24 grams, which means the female prostate is about a fifth the size of the male prostate. The reason this is important is because according to the International Society of Sexual Medicine, men expel around 1.25 to 5 milliliters of semen when they ejaculate. The male prostate is responsible for about 30% of that ejaculate. The rest is sperm from the testes and fluid from the seminal vesicles. So, if the male prostate can produce, high estimate, 1.5 milliliters of fluid, it's really hard to imagine the smaller female prostate producing, let's say, more than, high estimate, 1 milliliter of fluid. So with this in mind, let's turn to squirting. What is in that fluid? And if it doesn't come from the female prostate, where does it come from? Dr. Salama and his colleagues set out to answer these exact questions in their 2015 study, The Nature and Origin of Squirting in Female Sexuality. Here's the study setup. 7 otherwise healthy women who self-reported squirting were recruited to undergo sexual arousal in the lab. The women were to empty their bladders, become sexually aroused, and squirt under the supervision of the researchers. The researchers collected 2 things. First, they collected ultrasounds of the bladder. These ultrasounds were taken before sexual arousal, right after the women emptied their bladders, aka right after they peed, during sexual arousal, right before the women squirted, and then after the women squirted. Second, they collected urine and squirting samples. So both the pre-sexual arousal urine and the squirting fluid were collected to be analyzed. Urine has urea, creatinine, and uric acid in it, all of which are essentially waste products from the body. And we know that true female ejaculate contains prostate-specific antigen, or PSA. So urea, creatinine, uric acid, and PSA were all analyzed in both the urine samples and the squirting samples. Here's what they found. Even though all of the women had emptied their bladders before sexual arousal, the second ultrasound taken during sexual arousal before squirting showed that all of their bladders had refilled. The third and final ultrasound taken after squirting showed all empty bladders. This finding in and of itself is very compelling evidence to support that this fluid likely originates in the bladder, which means that it's likely expelled through the urethra. Finally, the assessment of the urine and squirting samples revealed comparable urea, creatinine, and uric acid concentration in all 7 women's squirting samples, and small amounts of PSA were detected in 5 of the 7. Said another way, squirting is essentially the involuntary emission of urine during sexual activity, although a marginal contribution of prostatic secretions to the emitted fluid often exists. So, female ejaculation is real. It's been documented as early as 300 BC. In this moment, we think there are 2 different kinds of female ejaculation: true female ejaculation and squirting. Female ejaculation is a small amount of milky white fluid that contains PSA and some sugars and likely originates from the female prostate. And squirting is a larger amount of clearer, more watery fluid that likely originates from the bladder and has components that are similar to urine. I wish I could tell you why women ejaculate, but the truth is we really have no idea. There is some talk in the scientific community that true female ejaculation might aid in pregnancy, and that's because PSA and fructose help sperm motility, which is just a fancy way of saying that PSA and fructose would help sperm travel to an egg. But that theory isn't widely accepted because guess what kills sperm? Urine. In my previous videos surrounding female sexual health, I constantly emphasize just how different female sexual experiences can be. Female ejaculation is no exception, and all versions of it are valid and real. The last topic that I want to discuss is the variability in female ejaculation. We have so much left to learn. So, calling back to that 2015 study that we just extensively reviewed, why would some women's squirting samples have PSA and others not? Maybe because some women experience both true female ejaculation and squirting simultaneously during sexual arousal. It stands to reason that some of that true female ejaculate could travel into the bladder or into the urethra given the anatomy and something called transudation, which is just a fancy way of saying the passage of fluid through a membrane. It happens in the vagina all the time. Or maybe it has to do with the documented variation in the size and shape of the female prostate. Or another thought, maybe some women don't have a female prostate and therefore cannot produce PSA at all. Here is a 2011 study that investigated 25 women and could only find the female prostate in half of them. Here is a 2009 study that investigated 7 women and could only find the female prostate in 6 of them. Furthermore, female ejaculation and squirting happen at different times during the sexual arousal cycle, not just orgasm, and with different kinds of stimulation, not just G-spot stimulation. This 2009 study that we talked about earlier surveyed 13 female ejaculators about their experiences. 11 respondents stated that ejaculation occurred either immediately preceding, during, or after orgasm. Most women reported that when ejaculation occurred varied between experiences. 2 women reported that ejaculation and orgasm were independent events. One clearly stated that ejaculation occurred at an earlier phase in her arousal cycle, and whether or not ejaculation occurred did not influence whether or not orgasm occurred. The second woman stated that ejaculation could occur earlier in her arousal cycle, but now most often happened in conjunction with orgasm. Ejaculation occurring before, during, or after orgasm, and then also as an entirely independent event from orgasm that has no influence on orgasm. Again, female ejaculation can occur at different times during a sexual arousal cycle, not just orgasm. At first, this concept might seem really bizarre to us, maybe because we are so used to seeing penises ejaculate during orgasm. But we know some humans with penises can separate the two and have purposeful dry orgasms before a wet orgasm. Calling back to that 2013 study that surveyed 320 female ejaculators from around the world, by the participants' own definitions, female ejaculations were clitoral orgasms in 167 women and vaginal orgasms in 168 women. Ejaculation was slightly more common during masturbation than during intercourse. Interestingly, 62 women experienced ejaculation during anal stimulation. A further form of female ejaculation is spontaneous fluid emission without sexual stimulation, which was reported by 33 women. 13 of these experienced ejaculation during sleep. Ejaculation essentially occurring half the time with clitoral stimulation, half the time with vaginal or G-spot stimulation, and then 20% of the time with anal stimulation. Again, female ejaculation and squirting happen with different kinds of stimulation, not just G-spot stimulation. And 13 of these women reported ejaculation with absolutely no stimulation whatsoever, ejaculation during sleep. I assume that would be ejaculation via visualization in the form of sex dreams. Finally, without deep diving into the research, know that the details of female ejaculation and squirting are still up for debate. Women report ejaculation exiting their bodies from their urethra, from their vagina, from both simultaneously, and sometimes they aren't really sure. And hey, this is consistent with the anatomical variations that we know exist in the female prostate. There is evidence to support that the female prostate has ducts or openings into the urethra and the vagina. Also, the world record holder for volume squirted is Lola Jean, a sex educator, instructor, and coach. She squirted 1,250 milliliters in just 25 seconds. That's more than a liter of fluid. The bladder's volume capacity is around 600 milliliters. It typically fills every 2 to 3 hours, and we typically urinate every 2 to 3 hours depending on what we're drinking. 600 milliliters is less than half of what Lola Jean squirted in just 25 seconds. What's the mechanism there? We have no idea. I've said it before and I will say it again. Bottom line, we are all different and there is so much beauty in the variability. We don't know if all women can ejaculate. We don't know if all women can squirt. And that's okay. We need to validate women's experiences of pleasure wherever those experiences come from, because there is no right or wrong way to inherit pleasure. And every woman is deserving of her pleasure without shame or guilt or expectation. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I am so honored to be making request videos. I am so honored to be making this video. Please, if you found it helpful, like it and share it. I want this to be general public knowledge. Feel free to comment anything below, including content suggestions for future videos. I try really hard to read and respond to all of my comments. I have also created an anonymous female orgasm survey. It is 3 questions long, 2 yes or no questions, 1 open-ended question. If you have female genitalia and you'd like to participate, that would mean so much to me. You can find a link to that survey in the description below. Finally, please subscribe to my channel for more content surrounding pelvic health and also surrounding life things. Check me out on Instagram. I have been working to improve the aesthetic of my Instagram, and I think it's getting better, although it doesn't come very naturally to me. And again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.